Welcome to the Phosphine Catalogue, number 15035. We see light where others see only darkness. I regret to announce that all appointments are cancelled this week due to flooding over the weekend. The reader may rest assured that all lots, whether on display in our galleries or stored in our vaults, are completely safe. We have extremely comprehensive fire, theft and flood protections, and all systems performed admirably during the incident. The public areas of the ground floor, however, fared rather worse, and will take some time to clear and dry before we may accept guests. I can confirm that blind bidding for selected lots will continue, where the provenance of the artwork is so well known that no viewing is necessary. Call our reception to speak with me directly. My secretary is unavailable at present. All being well, regular appointments to enjoy our lots will resume next week. The catalogue is grateful for both the reader's patience during this time and for the almost miraculous preservation of all our lots within. Miraculous isn't the half of it, Morwenna. I don't know when you'll hear this, perhaps when you're finished with whatever spooky stuff you're up to, but it was incredible. Mina telephoned just as I was leaving the house this morning. I was half out of the door when Ola called me back in. I couldn't understand Mina at first. I thought she was asking about Rossetti House, as it's on Flood Street. But no, she was panicking about a different kind of flooded street. By the time I arrived at the Catalogue building, Mina was madly sweeping mud and detritus out onto the pavement with her bare hands. I rushed to check all the galleries, imagining them underwater. It had come in on the ground floor and poured down the stairs and into the basement. But my fears were only half correct. As I said, the public areas and stairwell were, indeed, very damaged. But by the afternoon, the floors were dry thanks to Edgeworth and Sons, you know, that specialist clean-up company we've worked with before. Their fee was as good as their service. I paid Helena Edgeworth double their emergency call-out rate for her discretion. I wasn't sure what she was going to see. But I needn't have worried. The flood didn't get into the galleries themselves, and so neither did she nor her crew. I checked each of the galleries thoroughly over the course of the afternoon, making sure not to be followed in, and they were all perfect. I was so relieved, Morwenna, you don't even know. But the strangest thing were the gallery doors. They're all hermetically sealed, and by that I mean they're airtight, not that they've been sealed with hermetic alchemy or whatever. I think. But I don't think they needed to be. The floodwater didn't even touch them. Every gallery door is clean, despite the tide line of muck half a foot up the corridor walls right next to them. I know about the covenants that visitors have to sign to enter the galleries. Part legal disclaimer, part guy's magic. But there are other protections here, aren't there? Against other forms of attack. There was no rain last night, or the night before, and no other building on the Whitechapel Road flooded today. This was no act of God, despite what our insurance company says. God had bugger all to do with it. This was an act of sabotage. A retaliation, I believe, by my housemate, Edward Porter. Lot number 1226. The Night's Tour. Geneviève Ricard, 1791. Oil on board, 24 by 18 inches, pine frame. For display in the Forster Room, when the building reopens next week, the catalogue is pleased to present a modest piece painted by an 18th century French aristocrat. Sadly, none of Geneviève Ricard's work survives outside this painting, and she's relatively unknown in the artistic world. I hope with this lot we may correct that oversight in a small way. The scene is of a grand parlour room, perhaps in Café de la Régence or the Académie des Sciences. A large, ornate, claw-footed table has been pushed in front of the cold fireplace to make space for a bulky cabinet in the centre of the room. on which a chessboard is set with pieces in play. The composition shows the high ceilings and large windows that were fashionable in high society during this period, both signifying wealth and luxury. The artist contrasts the rich blue wallpaper with dull hung portraits, being rendered such that they seem almost like ghostly silhouettes against the walls. Bright bands of light rake across the scene, pouring in from the windows. The sun is low and warm, casting long shadows behind the courtiers who are watching the game, and the two people either side of the chessboard. A man and a woman are playing the game of kings. The man has his back to us, but his head is turned to the side slightly, mid-laugh, his hand slapping his thigh. He wears a coarse but well-tailored frock coat, and in contrast to the other men in the scene, wears no powdered wig. Instead, his shoulder-length hair is unceremoniously unstyled. The woman across from him is also smiling. She holds a wine goblet in one hand and, if you'll believe it, reader, a lit cigarette in the other. The unlikely heroine is the subject of this painting, could be no doubt. All perspective lines point to her. Do you see the mantelpiece with golden clockwork on top? On what angle does it lie? And the gestures of the brightly dressed courtiers in the bottom left of the scene, to whom do they point? Even the sun itself throws its light through the windows, framing her in a rectangular spotlight of gold. This attention contrasts the plainness of her dress. She wears the simple petticoat of an 18th century peasant. Everything about this delightful superwoman is out of place. It strains the imagination to think that a working-class person might be permitted at this royal parlour, or that a woman would be drinking and smoking here at all, that she would be allowed to play chess against a male opponent. Especially a male opponent so high in society as the one depicted here. Though he has his back to the viewer, the hairline and profile are clear, and well known to history. This is none other than Benjamin Franklin. The fantastical subject notwithstanding, there is a great deal of historical accuracy to the Knight's Tour. Benjamin Franklin indeed lived in Paris from 1784, and did indeed play chess, but not, certainly, as it was depicted here in this painting. During his visit, there was a novel curiosity being exhibited at court. The mechanical Turk. A sideshow curiosity constructed by Wolfgang von Kempelen for Empress Maria Theresa, the Turk was claimed by the showman to be a clockwork automaton that could play chess at a high level. In reality, it was an elaborate illusion, with a human chess player hidden inside the cabinet, making magnetic moves by candlelight. Though we can find no specific records of the Turk's games, it can be assumed that when introducing the device, von Kempelen wove tales of magic from the Orient to intrigue the audience. To this end, attached to the cabinet was the torso of a mannequin with an articulating arm to move the chess pieces. Playing on the myths of the time, the mannequin was dressed as exotically as von Kempelen could imagine, with a turban perched atop its head. In 1804, some decades later, the Turk was sold to Johann Nepomuk Maelzel, who went on to exhibit it for its final years before it was claimed by fire in 1854. Many of the secret operators of the Turk during Maelzel's ownership of the device have come forward. All chess masters of their time, including Johann Baptist Allgaier, author of the first chess handbook in German, Aaron Alexandre, author of the 1837 Encyclopédie des Échecs, and William Lewis, perhaps the first person to ever be described as a grand master of the game. However, there are no accounts of whoever operated the device in von Kempelen's original run, a gap of over 2 decades. Here in the Knight's Tour, we are offered a hint at such an operator. Little is known about the artist's private life. Though Geneviève Ricard's name was often in print due to some scandal or other, her wealth and position at court allowed her to avoid public scrutiny. Much of her notoriety was due to her marital state. Heir to a vast fortune, but she died having never accepted a proposal, though she had received many. Here in the Knight's Tour, we are offered a hint at why she never married. In the painting, the subject, this plainly dressed, sunlit woman, looks directly at the viewer, or perhaps at Ricard herself, with an expression the fortunate reader may recognise if they have ever been in love. Franklin never knew how he came to be beaten by a machine, though, like many, he understood that some human illusion was at play, that there must be a man inside the box. In his diaries, Franklin often wondered who the Grand Master in the machine was, expressing regret at not being able to shake his hand after a game well played. It is unlikely he ever considered why someone would contort themselves into the uncomfortable conditions of the Turk, playing by candlelight in absolute silence. That it might have been because, had they not been so hidden, the Grand Master would have been barred from playing simply because of who she was. The artist has painted the pretty peasant girl overcoming all limits of her class, station, even gender. She has painted the subject as she herself saw her. Firstly, as a chess grandmaster, easily beating the above-average Franklin, but doing so with charm and grace that would fascinate the man for years to come. Secondly, as a quick-witted socialite, someone who should have been welcome in the courts and parlours across high society. And finally, as a wife and partner, the glint of diamond on her left ring finger shining in the centre of all perspective lines in the painting. Moena, I'm going to take a bit longer lunch break than usual. Sorry about that. Sarah's working on her latest painting at our Mulberry Street gallery, and I'm going to surprise her. It's been too long since I made time to see her properly. I'll rectify that mistake, and tell her that all my perspective lines lead back to her.
Hi folks, Tris here, writer of the Philosophy Catalogue. I do hope you love our show. If so, you might be interested to know that there are more episodes available on our Patreon. Between seasons, when Jude is away, Warwick Blackwood is curator, played by yours truly, and he has a very different attitude to curation. Membership starts at just £3 a month, and for your support of our independent production, you'll get episodes a week or so ahead of the public feed, and at higher tiers, the bonus Blackwood episodes, concept art, free stuff from our store, and even your name in the credits. No matter how you support Wolfie and I, even if it's just spreading the word to your friends, thank you so much for making this show possible. Okay, let me turn over this cassette.
Jo has not returned. David and I had hoped she might just turn up, maybe for breakfast. Instead, 2 police officers came round this morning to clarify some of what they called irregularities in David's story. I sat on the stairs eavesdropping on them in the lounge. These 2 were much more confrontational than when they took our statements the day before, and after a minute I heard why. They'd found no one called Josephine Croft registered at this address, and invited David to explain. I couldn't hear what he said to them, but I can guess. The tone of their conversation changed after David told them that Joe's birth name was Joseph. You're not supposed to lie to the police. I remembered something, looking back, when making my statement to the police. A bright flash of light behind me as I fled from Edward Porter, and a feeling of heat on my back. It was just for a second, like the flash of a camera, and I could see my silhouette projected onto the wall ahead of me. I didn't turn back, not to see what the light was, nor to help my friend. Oh, Jo, you silly thing. Moena, did you leave this on my desk? I got up for a cup of tea, and when I returned, it was here. No one passed me in the hall. I would have seen someone else do it. But I bet I might have missed you. Lot number 54108. Royalty free. Cornelis Kepler, 1961. Wood engraving. 13 by 10 inch, interlocking impossible shapes. I have here on my desk the only known print of royalty-free, a marvellous example of one of the many depictions of impossible objects by the artist. As may be known to the reader, Cornelis Kepler was an alias used by M.C. Escher, the famous Dutch graphical artist, for some of his more esoteric work. Looking at the delicate print, it hardly seems worth the trouble to have gone by anything other than his birth name. The work is recognisable as that of the modern master with barely a glance. Like many prints produced by the artist during this time, the page is mostly white, with fine geometric lines that typify engraving. Unlike wood cut, wood engraving is a type of relief printing where ink is applied to the surface of the block, in the same manner as a rubber stamp. This produces a positive image where the highlights of the wood are inked, rather than the negative, as in woodcut. The image depicts interlocking polyhedral wireframe shapes, not unlike those made by the artist in decades before, though there are subtle details present in this print that are absent in any others we have seen. What seems at first a large, many-pointed three-dimensional star yields more detail under careful scrutiny. When you visit the Manhattan Room, do try to count the corners of this shape. Readers may find it something of a challenge. The eye slips off the impossible angles depicted here, and I've never reached the same number twice. The artist is well known for his depictions of impossible geometries. There are some who have speculated that these are only impossible in our world, not in the artist's mind. To paint or record these, he was forced to render the higher dimensions that his eye had access to as three-dimensional conceptions, projected onto a plain two-dimensional piece of paper. Quite the challenge. This struggle will be familiar to any artist who's attempted to capture the ephemeral visions in the mind onto the page, canvas, or other base medium. We are, perhaps, like the ant, crawling around her two-dimensional life, being observed by us, a creature possessed of the third dimension of height. How might we seem to them? A god that could pluck up one of her sisters, disappearing it entirely from her life, potentially forever. Or perhaps, were we feeling benevolent, we might return the creature to its two-dimensional world. How then might it hope to understand what it had experienced? Where we voyage in dream is much like the journey of the ant, plucked from the three-dimensional world we understand and plunged into a space we cannot comprehend. When we return, we find it impossible to adequately describe what we saw there. We can hardly even think about what we saw, so grounded are we in our mundane world. But we know to our very core that the experiences in our dreams are not something that was here and is now gone. Just like the ant, we know on a very fundamental level that the things we saw are still waiting, unseen, perceiving our lives yet still, as impossible for us to conceive of as an ant might conceive of an aeroplane overhead. However, in Royalty Free, the artist does not merely attempt to show us unimaginable higher dimensions. Look closely, reader, at the void inside the many-pointed star. Is there nothing inside? Just a black ink void? Perhaps from one perspective, but not all. The artist has provided projections of this impossible geometric star as an architect provides side and top views of a house in plans. In among the firmament of background stars there are two that seem identical, one directly above, one directly to the right. Identical, until one leans in. The devil, or in this case, the man, is in the details. The geometric star to the right contains a tiny human figure, spread eagle, in obvious reference to Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. And the small star above has the same man, this time in profile. Both seem trapped in the cage-like shape of the central compound. Faint radiating construction lines suggest that these two projections are of the same star, as the elevation and top-down views of a house are of the same house. The man is visible from the front, and visible from the side, but not in the central large image. In there, it is only void. Morwenna. I could not quite get what this impossible print was telling me. I felt like something was just out of my grasp. So just now, I spoke with Rosette Marsh, our maths boffin, who immediately understood. It's about rotation, she told me. Take a piece of paper and look straight across the page. It's almost invisible because you're looking at the thin side, right? Now, a piece of paper is a pretty good analogue for a 2D shape, but it still has just the tiniest amount of height. A true 2D shape, one that has width and depth but no height, would be impossible for us to see if rotated exactly so we were looking across it, she said. Rosette also told me that my ant analogy wasn't quite right, as ants have heights of their own, so they have no way of rotating out of our sight. A true 2D creature, she said, could position itself so we couldn't see it at all. And here's where my brain started burning. By that logic, a 3D creature, such as ourselves, might hide from a higher dimensional adversary if only we learned how to rotate ourselves in the fourth dimension, turning ourselves in time. I'm beginning to wonder who left this on my desk. It wasn't you, Morwenna, was it? In Royalty Free, we see a glimpse of an unknown and unknowable world that is all around us, close at hand, tucked safely away from us in a higher dimension. But more than that, the artist hints at an advantage we may have in such a world, small and ignorant though we... Oh, Dean! The rehearsal isn't until 7, right? I'm just finishing up here and... Oh. I thought... Of course, Lord Aldwick. That's fine. Let me finish this recording for Morwenna. It was you! What have you done with her? He put you somewhere safe. Shit. Shit. Morwenna, I'm in your office. I'm sorry about the door. I'll get a locksmith to repair the damage Liz Morgan's boot did to it. Aldwick said he'd put you somewhere safe. I didn't want to believe it. Lot number... not yet assigned. Named, Seemly Unseelie. 1976. Oil? Yes. Still wet. On... what is this? Stone? Oil on stone. Maybe 3 foot by 5 foot? A portrait of a woman in a green dress made of leaves, surrounded by giant, twisted trees. Oh, Morwenna, what has he done to you?
The Phosphine Catalogue is a Namtao production. The voice of Jude Francis Sharp is Wolfie Thorns, and the show is written and produced by me, Tris Oaten. For links to our merch store, the music, and Mastodon account, check out the podcast's website, phosphinecatalogue.com. To become a patron of the arts and get bonus episodes and other perks, it would be very kind of you to support us at patreon.com/Phosphine Catalogue. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.